Chen can't help but stare as the conclave's botanical maintenance drones rush to clean the spilled hydration fluid. The blue liquid seems to react with the polished floor, creating tiny whirlpools of luminescence that captivate several of the more mathematically inclined delegates. "I don't understand," Chen whispers to Dr. Nasir Rahman, Earth's xenobiologist. "What exactly did I say wrong?" Rahman adjusts his translation implant, listening intently to the growing arguments among the alien representatives. His eyes widen. "They don't have boats," he says simply. "What do you mean they don't have boats? How could spacefaring civilizations not have?" "Not just that," Rahman interrupts. "According to what I'm hearing, most species mathematically proved boats impossible before they developed writing systems. The concept of making large objects float on liquid deliberately, it violates some fundamental theorem they all accept." The Mzili ambassador recovers his composure, his chromatophores now pulsing in regular patterns of formal communication. The chamber's automated translator converts his fluid language. "Humans, this claim cannot be dismissed as mere cultural misunderstanding. You describe technology that fundamentally contradicts established physical principles accepted by all conclave species for millennia. The Tarn theorems clearly establish that any artificial structure exceeding 14 meters in length attempting to maintain buoyancy in a liquid medium will experience catastrophic resonance cascade failure." Ken glances at the Earth delegation. Most look as confused as she feels. Only Admiral Choi, their military observer, seems amused. The elderly naval officer leans forward and whispers something to Chen's aide, who quickly pulls up images on his datapad. "Perhaps," Chen says carefully, "a visual demonstration would help clarify our position." With a gesture, she authorizes the transfer of Earth's prepared cultural briefing to the conclave's central display system. The massive holographic array above the chamber flickers to life, showing crystal-clear footage of Earth's oceans. A collective gasp sounds as the image resolves into an overhead view of a modern container ship, the massive Ever Given, navigating through the Suez Canal. The vessel, nearly 400 meters long and carrying thousands of shipping containers, dwarfs the waterway's banks. "This was a typical Earth cargo vessel," Chen explains into the stunned silence. "We operated approximately 50,000 such ships on our oceans. Some were significantly larger." The conclave erupts. Delegates surge forward, demanding closer inspection of what they clearly believe to be falsified imagery. Others retreat to personal devices, frantically calculating dimension ratios and displacement figures. A tall, willowy being composed primarily of crystalline carbon pushes through the crowd. The name that flashes on Chen's translator identifies it as the conclave's senior physical sciences coordinator, Ambassador Chen. It says, voice oddly melodic through the translator, "Are you claiming that your species routinely built artificial structures exceeding 400 meters in length that maintain stable flotation on liquid water?" "Yes," Chen replies simply. "For several thousand years." "Impossible," shouts another delegate, their environmental suit flashing warning patterns. "Such structures would fold under their own mass due to harmonic resonance within any fluid medium." Admiral Choi finally speaks up, his weathered face creased with a barely suppressed smile. "And yet," he says quietly, "we built them anyway. Perhaps your theorems need revision." The senior coordinator's crystalline form vibrates in what Chen's translator identifies as deep consternation. "If what you claim is true, humans have either discovered fundamental physical properties unknown to the conclave, or," it pauses, faceted surfaces reflecting the chamber's lights in prismatic patterns, "or," finishes Ambassador Tiskler of the Mzili, their tentacles now perfectly still in what Chen is beginning to recognize as absolute shock. Humans simply ignored the laws of physics, tried anyway, and somehow succeeded. Chen exchanges glances with her team. How could they possibly explain that humanity had been building vessels to cross oceans since before they understood the physics involved? That trial and error, not theoretical perfection, drove their technological evolution. As the arguments intensify, Admiral Choi leans back in his seat with the satisfied expression of a career military officer who has just witnessed the most effective show of force possible, all without firing a single shot. Your species built these vessels before you understood the physics behind them. The question comes from a gelatinous being whose translucent body pulses with biochemical reactions that Alina assumes represent thought processes. Absolutely, Alina confirms, pulling up ancient Egyptian papyri showing reed boat construction. These date back to approximately 4000 BCE. Humans built increasingly sophisticated vessels through observation and iteration, not mathematical proofs. The committee exchanges a series of communications too rapid for her translator to process. Alina takes advantage of the momentary break to sip water from her canteen. 20 hours of questioning has left her voice raw and her patience thin. Demonstrate the principles of your aircraft carrier again, demands Vixptal, the arachnoid scientist who seems most disturbed by humanity's revelations. Alina sighs and activates the hologram for what must be the 12th time. The detailed cross-section of a Nimitz-class carrier rotates slowly above the central table. As I've explained, the displacement of water by the hull creates buoyancy. The ship's weight is distributed to maintain stability even in storm conditions. These ballast tanks can be filled or emptied to adjust the vessel's draft. But the wave harmonics would create destructive resonance patterns along this axis, interrupts a gaseous entity contained within a hovering mechanical sphere. It highlights a section of the hull with a projected light beam. That's why we incorporated these structural elements, Alina explains, highlighting the carrier's internal bracing. They're designed to absorb and redistribute stress from wave action. Trial and error, mutters the Vraxian elder who had collapsed earlier. Your species simply built things, observed their failures, and made adjustments without proving mathematical viability first. That's a fair assessment of early shipbuilding, Alina acknowledges. Later designs incorporated sophisticated hydrodynamic modeling, but the fundamental principles were discovered through practical experimentation. The committee falls into stunned silence. Alina takes the opportunity to advance her presentation to footage of modern vessels navigating through hurricane conditions. The massive ships rise and fall on waves that would dwarf most conclave meeting chambers. This is routine, asks a crystalline being, its voice tinged with what Alina's translator identifies as horror. Shipping continued through all but the most extreme weather conditions, she confirms. Global commerce depended on it. The committee members exchange glances that require no translation, pure disbelief. One final question. Dr. Kazan, says the committee chairperson, a being whose species Alina hasn't been able to identify. Your historical archives indicate these vessels were primarily constructed of materials with limited tensile strength: wood, steel, aluminum. Our simulation suggests such materials would catastrophically fail under the combined stresses of gravity, wave action, and internal load distribution. Alina can't help but smile. Yet they didn't fail. We built wooden ships over 100 meters long in the 19th century. Steel vessels exceeding 400 meters became common by the late 20th century. The principles work regardless of what your simulations suggest. As the committee dissolves into heated debate, the energy being that had approached her earlier hovers closer. I believe I understand now, it hums softly, its translator set to private mode. Your species never developed the Carn theorems that mathematically proved large-scale flotation impossible. Without that knowledge constraining your thinking, you simply tried. Is that so strange? Alina asks. For the conclave, unthinkable. Mathematical proof precedes practical application for all member species. Theory dictates practice, never the reverse. Its energy field fluctuates in what might be amusement. Your boats are not merely an engineering achievement, Dr. Kazan. They represent a fundamentally different approach to knowledge itself. As Alina ponders this observation, the committee chairperson calls for order. The scientific committee will recess for deliberation, the chairperson announces. Dr. Kazan, you will remain available for further questioning. Elena nods wearily, wondering what maritime principle she'll need to explain next. Outside the chamber's window ports, the stars seem to mock the committee's certainties about what is and isn't possible. The emergency conference call stretches into its fifth hour. Holographic projections of Earth's greatest minds hover around Admiral Wells in his temporary quarters aboard the Conclave diplomatic station. They're not just skeptical, they're hostile, says Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, propulsion specialist and former director of NASA's Jupiter mission. Her avatar flickers as she gestures emphatically. The Zilgari delegation has already filed formal protests claiming our boat technology violates some obscure Conclave resource protection treaty. Of course they have, Wells replies, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. We're threatening the status quo. The Zilgari control 90% of conventional gas giant mining operations. If we can float harvesters directly on gas giant atmospheres, their monopoly collapses overnight, finishes Dr. Tanaka. The materials scientist hologram shows him surrounded by complex molecular models. That's precisely why we must accept this challenge. The economic implications extend far beyond pride or scientific validation. General Adayemi, Earth Defense Force Commander, clears her throat. The military implications can't be ignored either. If we can navigate environments the Conclave considers impassable, we gain strategic advantages they can't counter. Wells nods slowly. So we're agreed. We accept the challenge and develop a demonstration vessel that will force the Conclave to acknowledge our technology. With what resources? Dr. Rodriguez asks. We're talking about research and development costs that would bankrupt small nations. Not to mention the Conclave will be watching our every move, adds Dr. Tanaka. Any significant breakthrough will be monitored, possibly stolen. Wells smiles thinly. Then we'll give them exactly what they expect to see. He taps a command into his secure terminal, and a new hologram appears. A design schematic labeled Project Archimedes. Public version. This is what the Conclave observers will be allowed to monitor, he explains. A straightforward adaptation of conventional Earth shipbuilding techniques, scaled up for Titan's methane seas. Nothing revolutionary, just good solid engineering that will still impress them. General Adeyemi raises an eyebrow. And the actual project? Wells enters another command. A second schematic appears, labeled Project Archimedes. Phase 2. My God, whispers Dr. Rodriguez. Is that even possible? According to our preliminary simulations, yes, Wells confirms. While the Conclave watches us build what they consider an impossible boat, we'll be developing something they can't even conceive of. The resource requirements are astronomical, Dr. Tanaka observes, studying the schematics closely. And we'd need to conduct critical tests in absolute secrecy. The lunar shipyards provide sufficient cover, General Adayemi says, and I can divert military resources under classified project designations. What about personnel? Asks Dr. Rodriguez. We need the best minds on this, but secrecy becomes exponentially more difficult with each person involved. I have someone in mind to lead the development team. Wells says, Dr. Maya Okonkwo. Her work on adaptive materials is decades ahead of anyone else, and she understands operational security from her military contracts. The group falls silent, contemplating the enormity of what they're proposing. If we succeed, Dr. Tanaka says finally, we won't just impress the Conclave. We'll rewrite humanity's future among the stars. And if we fail? Asks Dr. Rodriguez. Wells' expression hardens. Then humanity becomes a footnote in galactic history. The species that made remarkable boats but couldn't adapt to interstellar politics. We've faced worse odds, General Adeyemi remarks dryly. The Conclave expects us to either decline their challenge or produce something underwhelming that confirms their superiority. Instead, Wells says, a smile slowly spreading across his weathered face, we'll remind the galaxy of something humanity has proven repeatedly throughout our history. What's that? Asks Dr. Tanaka. Never underestimate a species that crossed oceans and hollowed out logs just to see what was on the other side. As the meeting concludes, Wells stands alone at the viewport of his quarters, watching the distant stars. Behind him, the holographic schematics for Project Archimedes rotate slowly, showing a vessel unlike anything humanity, or the Conclave, has ever seen. Dr. Maya Okonkwo's hands dance through the holographic interface, manipulating molecular structures with the precision of a concert pianist. Around her, the lunar facility's main design chamber hums with activity as engineers debate material stress tolerances and propulsion configurations. The stabilization system doesn't account for cryogenic temperature fluctuations in Titan's atmosphere, protests Krulvex, the Conclave observer assigned to shadow Maya. The insectoid alien's compound eyes reflect the blue glow of the schematics. At these dimensions, thermal expansion alone will compromise hull integrity. Maya doesn't look up from her work. We've integrated carbon nanotube lattices throughout the hull sections. They'll compensate for thermal variations. She makes a minor adjustment to the molecular structure displayed before her. Earth vessels have navigated environments from Arctic ice fields to tropical typhoons for centuries. Temperature variation is a solved problem. Krulvex makes a clicking sound that Maya has learned indicates frustration. But Titan's methane seas react differently than water. The Xarn theorems clearly state. Dr. Okonkwo interrupts a junior engineer. We've completed the preliminary tests on the hull coating. Results are unexpected. Maya nods to her assistant, Dr. Jasmine Chen. Keep our guest entertained, would you? She follows the engineer to a cordoned-off testing chamber, safely out of the Conclave observer's hearing range. Inside, a small sample of dark material floats in a containment field. It seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating the impression of a hole in reality itself. Is that what I think it is? Maya asks quietly. The engineer nods. Quantum phase shifting material, just as you predicted. When exposed to Titan's atmospheric conditions, the molecular structure reconfigures to maintain optimal buoyancy regardless of external pressure or chemical composition. And the energy requirements. Minimal once initialized. It essentially creates a self-sustaining quantum field that adapts to environmental conditions. Maya allows herself a small smile. The observers can't know about this. Not yet. She returns to the main chamber, where Krulvex continues to critique the design elements visible on the public schematics. Your ballast system is fundamentally flawed. The alien insists. The pressure differentials at Titan's lower atmospheric levels would crush these tanks. We'll reinforce them, Maya replies dismissively, entering commands that update the public design with conventional strengthening elements. What Krulvex doesn't see is the separate terminal where her real work continues, designs for a vessel that doesn't fight against its environment, but becomes part of it. Later that night, after the observers have retired to their quarters, Maya meets with her core team in the facility's secure conference room. The space is shielded against any form of surveillance, its systems completely isolated from the main facility network. How much does the Conclave actually understand about what we're building? Asks Dr. Emeka Mosu, quantum propulsion specialist. They think they're watching us design an oversized oil tanker, Maya replies, activating the room's holographic display. The true Project Archimedes appears, a vessel that seems to defy conventional understanding of solid matter. They're expecting us to brute force our way through the challenge using scaled-up conventional technology. And meanwhile, we're completely reimagining the relationship between vessel and medium, adds Dr. Chen, examining the quantum field projections with satisfaction. The irony, notes Dr. Mosu, is that our breakthrough came from studying ancient Polynesian sailing techniques. Their canoes didn't fight against the ocean. They became part of it, working with the waves rather than against them. Maya nods, remembering her grandmother's stories of Nigerian fishing boats that seemed to dance with the water rather than merely float upon it. The Conclave species evolved on worlds where liquids were primarily obstacles to overcome. They built their physics around resistance and separation. while we evolved on a world that was mostly water. Dr. Chen finishes the thought. Our entire history is defined by learning to navigate liquid environments. How long can we maintain the deception? Asks Dr. Noisu. The observers aren't stupid. Eventually, they'll notice discrepancies between our public designs and the actual construction. Maya displays the project timeline. We only need another 6 weeks. By then, the prototype's outer hull will be complete, conventional in appearance, but incorporating our quantum materials as experimental insulation. Once we reach Titan, the true nature of what we've built will become apparent. And by then, Dr. Chen adds with a smile, it will be too late for the Conclave to stop what we've set in motion. Captain Amara Singh watches the methane storm front approach through Titan's hazy orange atmosphere. The prototype vessel, officially designated Archimedes I, but nicknamed Impossible by her crew, cuts through the liquid methane with surprising grace for something its size. Atmospheric pressure dropping rapidly, reports Lieutenant Komatsu from the Environmental Monitoring Station. Storm intensity exceeding predicted parameters by 37%. Conclave observation vessels are pulling back to orbital safety positions, adds Communications Officer Chen. They're strongly recommending we abort the mission. Amara allows herself a small smile. In her 15 years with Earth's naval forces, she's navigated hurricanes, typhoons, and rogue waves that would make this methane storm look like a gentle breeze, at least in terms of mechanical force. The chemistry of Titan's seas presents unique challenges, but the principles remain the same. Maintain course, she orders calmly. Begin pre-storm protocols. The bridge crew responds with practiced efficiency, nothing in their movements betraying the fact that they're making history as the first humans to sail an alien sea. Years of simulations and training have prepared them for this moment. Captain, Lieutenant Komatsu's voice drops to a concerned whisper. The conventional hull integrity monitors are showing stress fractures forming in sections 3 through 7. Amara nods slightly. This is expected. The public-facing outer hull is designed to show precisely the kind of failures the Conclave observers would predict. What they can't see are the quantum phase shift materials beneath that outer shell, already adapting to the changing conditions. Sound general quarters, she orders. All personnel to emergency stations. As alarm klaxons echo through the vessel, Amara opens a secure channel to the engineering deck. Dr. Okonkwo, how are our special systems holding up? Maya's voice comes through clearly despite the growing interference from the storm. Quantum field stabilization at 93% and holding. The material is adapting faster than our simulations predicted. It's learning from the environment in real time. Is it safe to initiate Phase 2? A pause. Yes, but the Conclave observers will immediately detect the energy signature. There's no hiding what we've built after that. Amara glances at the tactical display. The observation vessels are now well beyond visual range, relying entirely on remote sensors to monitor the prototype's condition. Perfect. That's a risk we'll have to take, she decides. The storm's intensity gives us the perfect cover story for emergency measures. She switches to the general communication channel. All hands, prepare for Phase 2 initialization. This is not a drill. The bridge lights dim momentarily as power redirects to the quantum systems. On the external camera feeds, Amara watches as the vessel's outer hull begins to change. The conventional metal composite surface seems to melt, flowing like quicksilver before reforming into something altogether different. A surface that doesn't merely resist the methane sea but synchronizes with it on a molecular level. Quantum field fully established, reports Maya from engineering. Hull transition complete. The effect is immediate. Where the vessel had been fighting against the growing waves, it now moves with them, the quantum material creating a boundary layer that allows the ship to partially phase into harmony with the liquid medium itself. My God, whispers Lieutenant Komatsu, staring at the sensor readings. We're not floating anymore. I don't even have words for what we're doing. We're sailing, Amara says simply, just like our ancestors did, but with a better understanding of the medium. On the communication panel, urgent messages from the conclave observation vessels demand explanation for the energy signatures they're detecting. Their sensors show impossible readings, a vessel that exists simultaneously in multiple quantum states, neither fully solid nor fully fluid. "Should I respond, Captain?" asks Officer Chen. Amara shakes her head, watching as the massive methane wave, taller than Earth's highest skyscrapers, looms before them. "Let's give them something worth watching first." She grips the command rail as the vessel approaches the wave. Instead of attempting to climb the impossible wall of liquid, the Archimedes seems to dissolve into it, the quantum field allowing them to partially merge with the wave itself as they pass through it rather than over it. For 3 breathless minutes, the external cameras show nothing but swirling methane. Then, as suddenly as they entered, they emerge from the other side of the storm front, sailing smoothly through suddenly calm seas. "Damage report?" Amara asks, already knowing the answer. "None, Captain," replies Komatsu in disbelief. "All systems functioning at optimal levels. The quantum field actually gained energy from the passage." Amara opens a channel to the observation vessels, which are frantically trying to make sense of what their sensors have recorded. "Conclave vessels, this is Captain Singh of the Earth vessel Archimedes. Weather's clearing up. Perfect time for a test cruise. Care to join us?" Admiral Wells stands rock steady at the podium, despite the chaos erupting throughout the conclave grand chamber. Behind him, holographic displays show the Archimedes navigating Titan's methane seas with impossible grace, the quantum phase hull gleaming with subtle iridescence against the moon's orange haze. This is outrageous. The Zilgari representative's translator struggles to keep up with his rapid-fire syllables. The insectoid alien's chitinous exoskeleton flushes deep crimson with agitation. The humans have violated multiple sections of the Technology Disclosure Accord. "I must point out," Wells responds calmly, "that Earth never signed the Technology Disclosure Accord, as we weren't members of the conclave when it was ratified." The Zilgari representative buzzes angrily, mandibles clicking. "You deliberately concealed the true nature of your vessel." "We revealed exactly what we built. A boat," Wells replies with the hint of a smile. "The conclave challenged us to demonstrate our shipbuilding technology. We've done precisely that." On the chamber's central display, Dr. Kazan advances the presentation to show application schematics. Gas giant harvesters that could extract resources previously considered inaccessible. Research stations designed to navigate the plasma interfaces of stellar coronas. Transport networks that could cross regions of space where conventional propulsion fails. The quantum phase technology has applications far beyond mere transportation, she explains. It represents a fundamental shift in how we interact with environments previously considered hostile. The economic implications hit immediately. Species relegated to resource-poor star systems suddenly gain access to vast new reserves. Trade routes through unnavigable regions become viable overnight. The galactic market projections on auxiliary displays show massive shifts in resource values, with the Zilgari cartel's monopolies collapsing into freefall. "This is an economic attack," shrieks the Zilgari representative. "We demand immediate restrictions on this technology pending full review." Other delegations rise in protest, some supporting the Zilgari position, others vehemently arguing for immediate technology-sharing agreements with Earth. The Mzili ambassador, whose initial shock at human boats started this entire chain of events, remains conspicuously silent, tentacles rippling with complex color patterns too subtle for Wells' translator to interpret. As the chamber descends further into factional arguing, a crystalline chime cuts through the cacophony. Elder Cathelas of the Diraxian Collective rises from his observation platform, the ancient being's crystalline body capturing and refracting the chamber's light in hypnotic patterns. The conclave falls silent instantly. The Diraxians rarely speak in open session, their species so ancient they witnessed the formation of the conclave itself. "I would speak with the human admiral," Cathelas announces, his translator producing tones like wind through crystal caves. privately. Wells nods respectfully and follows the elder to a small meditation chamber adjacent to the main hall. Inside, Kithalaz's crystalline form settles into a hovering position, facets realigning to focus completely on Wells. Your boats are more significant than the conclave realizes. The elder begins, his voice now pitched for Wells alone. They represent a philosophical approach my species abandoned eons ago. I'm not sure I understand. Wells replies carefully. There are two paths to mastering the physical universe, Admiral. Cathalas explains. One seeks to impose order by eliminating chaos, the path the conclave has followed since its inception. Every species represented in that chamber evolved by creating absolute predictability in their environments, developing technologies that minimize variables rather than adapt to them. The elder's crystalline form shifts, creating a small holographic representation of the Archimedes navigating through Titan's methane storm. Your vessel doesn't fight the storm. It becomes part of it. This is the second path, one the conclave forgot millennia ago. Instead of eliminating chaos, you have learned to dance with it. Wells considers this carefully. On Earth, we have a saying, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." The elder's form pulses with what might be laughter. Precisely. My species once built vessels not unlike yours, Admiral, before mathematics convinced us they were impossible. We solved the chaos equation by removing variables. You solved it by embracing them. Will the conclave accept what we've created? Wells asks. Some will fight against it with everything they possess. Cathalas replies. Others will embrace it immediately, recognizing the paradigm shift. But regardless of their reaction, you have already changed the galaxy irrevocably. The elder's form shifts again, facets realigning. Your species has reintroduced something the conclave has lacked for too long. And what's that? Adaptation. Cathalas says simply, the courage to sail into storms rather than flee from them. Perhaps the galaxy needs more sailors and fewer mathematicians. As Wells ponders this observation, a subtle vibration runs through the station. Beyond the meditation chamber's viewport, he sees ships being hurriedly prepared for departure, some fleeing the implications of Earth's revelation, others racing to establish new alliances with humanity. The currents are changing, Admiral. Cathalas observes. I hope your species remembers how to navigate rough waters. It's what we do best, Wells replies with confidence. Dr. Maya Okonkwo guides the Conclave High Council delegation through the Jupiter shipyards, their environmental suits necessitated not by the gas giant's crushing pressure, which the quantum field generators neutralize completely, but by the different atmospheric requirements of the diverse species. Above them, massive construction drones maneuver building components larger than city blocks, their movements precisely choreographed in Jupiter's swirling clouds. What you're seeing is merely Phase 1, Maya explains, gesturing toward the skeletal framework taking shape within the planet's upper atmosphere. The outer hull structure is approximately 15% complete. This is significantly larger than the Titan prototype, observes the Mzili representative, their translator struggling to convey the appropriate level of awe. By several orders of magnitude, Maya confirms. The Archimedes was essentially a proof of concept. This vessel is designed for practical application. The Vraxian High Minister, who has maintained a posture of skeptical hostility throughout the tour, clicks his mandibles dismissively. You claim this structure will achieve stable buoyancy in the intergalactic medium. Ridiculous. The density differentials alone make such claims mathematically absurd. Maya activates her personal holographic projector. Above her palm, a simulation displays the vessel's quantum field systems, vastly more sophisticated than those employed in the Titan prototype. The quantum phase technology doesn't rely on conventional buoyancy, she explains patiently. It creates a harmonic resonance with the medium itself, allowing partial phase integration at the molecular level. In layman's terms, the vessel becomes partially one with the medium it travels through. Impossible. The Vraxian insists. The energy requirements alone would exhaust your species' entire production capacity for centuries. Maya smiles. Perhaps if we were using conventional energy generation. She gestures to a nearby construction drone, which obediently changes course to approach the observation platform. It carries a spherical object approximately 2 meters in diameter, its surface swirling with colors that seem to exist somewhere between normal space and elsewhere. This is a quantum resonance power core, Maya explains. It harvests energy directly from quantum fluctuations in the medium itself. The more turbulent the environment, the more energy generated. The prototype on Titan produced a 300% energy surplus during the methane storm passage. The delegates exchange glances, the implications settling in slowly. You're saying, the Mzili representative begins cautiously, that your vessel not only adapts to chaos but feeds on it. An apt metaphor, Maya acknowledges. Earth's oceans taught us that fighting against nature is futile. Better to work with it, become part of its systems rather than oppose them. She guides the delegation to the primary observation deck, which offers an unobstructed view of the construction site's true scale. What appeared to be a partial framework from their previous vantage point now reveals itself as merely one small section of a truly massive structure. Construction extends as far as visibility allows in Jupiter's atmosphere. This is planetary in scale, whispers an aide to the Vraxian minister, forgetting diplomatic protocol in their shock. The completed vessel will have a diameter of approximately 1,200 kilometers, Maya confirms. Its quantum field will extend significantly beyond that physical boundary. But why? Asks the Mzili representative. What purpose could possibly justify such scale? Maya activates the main holographic display. A simulation appears showing the completed vessel navigating the space between galaxies, regions previously considered impassable due to complex radiation fields, dark matter concentrations, and quantum instabilities. The intergalactic medium is far more complex than conventional space, she explains. Traditional propulsion systems fail there, and conventional shielding cannot protect against the unique radiation forms, but with quantum phase technology scaled appropriately. The simulation shows the massive vessel not fighting against these conditions, but harmonizing with them, its energy signature pulsing in complex patterns that match the surrounding medium. You truly intend to cross between galaxies. The Vraxian's tone has shifted from dismissive to reluctantly curious. That's simply the beginning, Maya replies. The intergalactic arc isn't merely transportation. It's a new paradigm for species facing extinction from dying stars or resource depletion. It can carry entire planetary populations safely through environments previously considered hostile to all life. A younger delegate from a species Maya doesn't recognize steps forward hesitantly. Dr. Okonkwo, our mathematical models suggest such a vessel would require materials that don't exist in sufficient quantities anywhere in the galaxy. Maya smiles. Take a closer look at the construction drones. The delegates observe more carefully and notice something strange. Where the drones connect new components to the framework, matter seems to flow and form rather than being merely attached. The quantum resonance field doesn't just allow us to navigate through media, Maya explains. It allows us to integrate with them at a fundamental level. The drones aren't just assembling prefabricated components. They're creating matter in place, drawing directly from the quantum foam of Jupiter's atmosphere. The chamber falls silent as the implications sink in. Your species, the Mzili representative says finally, has not merely built an impossible boat. You've reimagined the fundamental relationship between matter, energy, and space itself. Maya thinks about her grandmother's stories of fishing boats on Nigeria's coast, how the best fishermen didn't fight the sea but became one with it. Sometimes, she replies, the oldest wisdom leads to the newest discoveries. Admiral Wells stands on the central observation deck of the completed Archimedes Principle, his weathered face reflected in the transparent quantum glass that separates him from the void. At 84, his hair has gone completely white, but his posture remains military straight, defying both age and the artificial gravity. Behind him, the massive central promenade stretches for kilometers, filled with representatives from over 300 species. What began as a challenge to prove humanity's impossible shipbuilding technology has culminated in the most significant collaborative project in galactic history. Quite a view, isn't it? The voice belongs to Ambassador Tisklir of the Mzili, his translator now so attuned to human speech patterns that Wells sometimes forgets it's there. The aquatic diplomat's chromatophores pulse with what Wells has learned to recognize as profound respect. Better than I imagined, Wells admits, gazing outward at the massive vessel. From this central vantage point, the full scale of what they've created remains incomprehensible. A vessel that functions as both transportation and habitat, its quantum phase hull stretching nearly 1,500 kilometers across at its widest point. When you first mentioned boats in the conclave chamber, Tisklir says, tentacles gesturing expressively, I thought your translator had malfunctioned. The concept seemed so primitive. Wells smiles. Sometimes the oldest ideas lead to the newest discoveries. The observation deck's notification system chimes softly. Admiral, final systems check is complete, announces the ship's eye. All systems nominal. Quantum resonance field stable. We are ready for maiden voyage activation at your command. Wells taps his communication implant. Thank you, Archimedes. Begin pre-launch protocols. Around them, subtle vibrations indicate the massive vessel's systems coming fully online. Outside the viewport, the quantum phase hull begins to shimmer with increasing energy, the iridescent patterns flowing like oil on water as the fundamental nature of the matter itself shifts toward its active state. Your species accomplished in 10 Earth years what the conclave declared impossible for 50 millennia. Tisklir observes, watching the quantum field expand outward. Wells shrugs. Humans have always had a problem with being told what we can't do. On displays throughout the vessel, footage streams in from across the galaxy. Conclave scientists incorporating human fluid dynamics into their fundamental models. Shipyards on 30 worlds constructing vessels based on openly shared human designs. Agricultural ships harvesting resources from environments previously considered deadly. Admiral Wells. A young ensign approaches, her uniform bearing the insignia of both Earth's Space Force and the newly formed Intergalactic Exploration Corps. I've been asked to inform you that the Conclave Science Council has officially renamed an entire branch of physics after you. They're calling it Wellsian Quantum Integration Theory. Wells waves away the honor with embarrassment. Tell them to name it after humanity's shipbuilders instead, from the first person who hollowed out a log to float across a river, all the way to Dr. Okonkwo's team. We didn't discover anything new. We just remembered what countless generations of human sailors already knew. And what's that, Admiral? The ensign asks. That with the right design and enough courage, anything can be navigated. He gazes out at the stars waiting beyond Jupiter's orbit. That the universe isn't divided into hospitable and inhospitable environments, only into those we've learned to adapt to and those we haven't yet. A soft alert sounds throughout the vessel. Attention all personnel and passengers, announces the ship's eye. Intergalactic transition will commence in 10 minutes. Please secure all belongings and prepare for quantum field initialization. The promenade erupts in excited conversation as representatives from hundreds of worlds prepare for humanity's greatest voyage, the first deliberate crossing between galaxies, a journey that would take conventional ships millions of years compressed into mere months by the quantum phase technology. What are you thinking about, Admiral? Tisklir asks, noticing Wells' momentary introspection. Wells smiles, remembering the wooden model ships his grandfather helped him build on a rain-soaked Oregon beach nearly 8 decades earlier. I'm thinking about how far we've come from our first boats, and how, in the most important ways, we haven't changed at all. As the quantum engines power up, humming with energy harvested directly from the fabric of space-time, Wells places a hand against the viewport. Beyond the glass, Jupiter's storms rage with the same chaotic beauty that Earth's oceans had shown sailors for millennia. Not obstacles to overcome, but partners in an eternal dance of adaptation and discovery. Quantum field stabilized, reports the AI. Intergalactic medium interface engage. Awaiting your command, Admiral. Wells takes a deep breath. Across the vessel, humans and aliens alike turn toward view screens, waiting for the historic moment. Archimedes, Wells says simply, take us out. Let's see what's over the horizon. The massive vessel shimmers, its quantum field expanding until the boundary between ship and space becomes indistinguishable. Then, like a fishing boat slipping from shore into morning mist, the largest vessel ever created merges with the intergalactic medium and begins its journey toward Andromeda. Sailing on currents of probability through seas of stars,